From Western New York, this is Self-Advocacy in Action. Today's special guest is New York State Senator George Maziarz. Now, here are the super team, Gwen Squire and Mike Rogers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today our guest is Senator Maziarz. How are you doing?
Very good, Gwen. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Great to be here.
Hi, Senator. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you doing?
Good.
All right.
Well, I guess we want to start out by asking you a couple of things. First of all, some people might not know what district and who you represent, in the political world. Like, who are your constituents?
Okay. First, I want to thank Gwen and Mike and the Self-Advocacy Group for inviting me to be on the show. I've done the show a couple of times already and always enjoy it. Probably enjoy it more in July and August than I do in January, but that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. But Mike, back to your question. I represent the 62nd Senatorial District, which includes all of Niagara County, all of Orleans County, and then the towns of Ogden and Sweden in Monroe County.
Okay.
My district has changed up a little bit this year. I used to represent much more of Monroe, some of the city of Rochester actually, and after the census and the 2012 election, I now represent all of the city of Niagara Falls and all of Niagara County. So.
Wow. Okay. And because I didn't even know, exactly what you represented, so we wanted to find that out and let people know.
Sure.
What are your hot button issues that you're dealing with before getting into some of our stuff?
All right.
What are you dealing with?
It's middle of January right now. I'm not sure when this show will be shown, but it's the middle of January right now. We just went back to Albany. The governor did his State of the State last Wednesday. And the State of the State by the governor is when the legislature joins in a joint session to talk about some goals and objectives for the year. It's sort of very broad-based that the governor says. Now next week when we go back, and we're in session between January and the end of June, we'll be there every week. Next week, the governor will present his budget. That's really a lot more detailed. That's the number one goal, Mike, is to make sure that this fair share of state resources are spent in upstate New York and western New York in particular. Some of the other goals and objectives that we have is, I don't know if you're aware of it, there's a new curriculum that's been put out called the Common Core by the State Education Department.
Yeah.
I have talked to and met with parents, teachers, school administrators, superintendents of schools, building principals, everyone. No one seems to think that the way that this Common Core curriculum was rolled out and was implemented, that it was done in a very positive way.
Right.
I sponsored, along with several of my colleagues, a forum up at Kleinhans Music Hall, and 2,700 people showed up. Now you have Gwen, you and Mike, you and some of the other self-advocacy advocates have been to public hearings before. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes pretty tough to get 100 people out.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
2,700 people showed up.
That's
pretty good.
Really large.
Yeah.
That's great that they.
So those are just some of the things. Budget related, I certainly want to make sure that that we get our fair share of school aid in what I like to call the rural and suburban districts. The type of districts that I represent. Very concerned. The governor's called for some pretty good tax cuts, and I'm in favor of that. And of course, the devil is always in the details. We'll see in his budget exactly what he wants to cut and where.
Now we got really involved with you when it came to transportation.
Yes.
And the difficulties for not only people with disabilities, but anyone that rides transit in the area of cuts and routes and making our transportation system better. First of all, we want to thank you for your efforts as far as Paratransit is concerned. It was pretty landmark and groundbreaking that we were able to get that kind of movement when it comes to working with the Transportation Authority, and they worked with us pretty well on that as a collaboration. So we want to thank you. But what are your thoughts about what happened there and how transportation can be improved in the future and what we all need to do together.
Mike, I think what we should do, though, for our listeners is talk about what exactly paratransit is.
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's,
I
it's
agree, I
different,
agree.
let's say, than a local bus service, you know.
Well, I'll handle that.
Okay, all right, Gwen.
Paratransit.
What a great segue, right?
Yep. Paratransit is where people who have disabilities are able to utilize transportation. They come right to your house, door to door, but you have to be living within a fourth of a mile, I believe it is, of the bus
Right.
stops.
3/4.
3/4 of a mile. So,
Right, right, and the NFTA, the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, had announced that they were closing some bus routes, and therefore
Yes.
that triggered closing of some paratransit routes.
Yes.
We met with them, and I want to give some kudos, as Mike said. They worked with us. Howard Zemsky, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners of the NFTA, Kim Minkle, the executive director, sat down with us, worked on it. I know that all of my colleagues from Western New York, on the Assembly side, kind of headed by Assemblyman Mickey Kearns, a good friend to me and also to the disabled community.
Yes.
And we worked very hard to make sure that we did not get these routes cut, or that if they were cut, that some other services were put in their place. Now, the one thing we have to do, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us, is, you know, when the NFTA has, you know, a limited amount of dollars, and we think they have proven the fact that they get shortchanged in the state budget. So this year, I was just talking yesterday to my colleague, Senator Mark Rosani and Senator Pat Gallivan, and we're going to make a very concerted effort to make sure that the funding formula for upstate transportation agencies is changed to reflect that a more fair, equitable distribution of state dollars. So hopefully we get that done, you know, that they could either not cut any more bus routes. You know, if they don't cut the bus routes, they don't cut the paratransit routes. So
Right.
Well, one question that I had about that, thinking about this, how do we get the general public to advocate more for the bus system when a lot of people, when they don't live in the urban areas, they will say, well, I use a car, why take a bus?
Yeah.
What do you think
You know,
about how do we get people to advocate for a better transit system so it's not all just on you guys?
Yeah. You know, that's a very good point that you make, Mike, because what we have to do, I know that I met with a group up here in Lockport, and actually right outside my Lockport office there is an NFTA bus stop there. And several community groups like NOAA, Voice Buffalo, I think, came out and said, you know, we're cutting a bus route that services predominantly a low-income segment of the population. The NFTA came back and said, you know, there's only 8 riders a day on this bus route. You know, you're sending this big bus. Now, they could do a lot better with maybe sending smaller buses. You know, if you only have 8 riders a day, you don't need, you know, one of those big buses. Everything. But I do think, Mike, back to your point, that we have to do a better job of selling the service. I mean, in downtown Lockport, there's a big public housing complex called Urban Park Towers. You know, I had the NFTA go in there, hold some meetings there, and talk to the people who are residents there. I mean, these are residents who don't have, for the most part, don't have cars. You know, I mean, you know, where can we have buses going out the transit road to medical appointments, things like that they would use to kind of up that ridership? That's really what we have to do, is increase that ridership. You know, and the NFTA is, I think, been doing a better job of that of late.
And I think so too, because a lot of people are you know, voicing their idea about a better transportation system in the Western New York area.
I was very happy to see that they did not cut any bus routes in the city of Niagara Falls. You know, in the city of Niagara Falls, a very high population of low-income people, and these are the people that tend to use the buses the most. So they did not cut any. They did not propose to cut any routes in the city of Niagara Falls. I think that was a very positive thing. I was very happy to see that. So if they don't cut the bus routes, they don't cut the paratransit routes, which is even, you know, it's sort of like a twofer.
Now we're sitting here talking with you, and a lot of people and many people with disabilities are can be intimidated talking to their representatives.
That's never been your problem, Mike. I can tell you.
I don't get intimidated by much.
No.
You know, I mean, we have to work together here. But what would you say as a senator when, you know, how did you feel before you became a politician about talking with your representative? Maybe in your younger years, I'm not saying you're old, but in your younger years, you know, before you got involved, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, Mike, I
I
was always, I think, very outspoken, particularly on public policy issues. Even when I was a young person, I remember going with my dad to city council meetings in the city of North Tonawanda, and you know, that's why I think it's so important that we have organizations like the Independent Living Center, you know, like some of the not-for-profit providers that we have for individuals with special challenges, because I think it encourages them, and you know, maybe takes away some of the shyness or introvertedness that people might have, so that they get involved in programming like they have at the Independent Living Center. I think it's great. You know, I just think that you know, we can always do a better job of it, but I think we've come a long way here in the state of New York.
I mean, I think so too, and I think that, because we were going to talk about voting as well, and I get a lot from people that say my vote doesn't matter. Why? They don't listen. I hear people say, you know, you see, you know, politics on TV, and it's all about, you know, what they want. They really don't listen to the people, and I get a lot of that.
Yeah.
What would you say?
You know, I think that the media today, you know, it's so instantaneous, and excuse me, it's 24 hours, 24/7. You know, you can turn on a number of direct news channels, as you referenced, Mike, and you know, and a lot of them have these talking heads who think that they're very important, that their opinion matters, and nobody else's opinion does matter. You know, I think it turns people off for the most part. That's too bad, because I encourage people to vote all the time. You know, I have a system in my office where anytime someone registers to vote, you know, we send them a letter welcoming to the voter rolls, regardless of which party that they affiliate with. And you know, during the summertime at our county fairs in Monroe County and Orleans County and here in Niagara County, I have a voter registration drive at the county fairs. I have a booth at the county fairs where I offer people the opportunity to vote, and I encourage people to vote. You know, whether you're going to vote, you know, again, regardless of what political party you're with, whether you're going to vote for George Maziarz or not for George Maziarz, it's important that people get out there and vote. Unfortunately, in our country, you know, as opposed to some other countries, we have a very low voter participation. I don't know why that is. You know, we're the wealthiest country in the world, the most high-tech country in the world, and yet we just can't get you know, voter participation out there.
I think
don't
people
know.
with disabilities sometimes get a little discouraged because you go to the voting place and then some people don't know how to use the machines to run the, you know, lower it and do whatever, and they get a little impatient, and it's like, okay, then why am I even here? Obviously, it doesn't matter because nobody knows how to fix anything.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've come a long way, though, Gwen. I think you
I
can
know.
say, you know, and actually, I served on that committee with one of my colleagues, the late Senator Tom Morahan, who had a daughter who was disabled, and you know, now all over New York State, the same machines are in use. It's all electronic. You know, you fill it out. Provisions are made. Every polling place in the state of New York today must be accessible for everyone. Must be. There's no exceptions to the rule. So, you know, I think we've come a long way. I remember when I was, oh my God, when I was first started out in this business, a lot of polling places were in old churches down in the basement, in schools that you know you'd have to walk a mile just to get to them. Now all polling places, and it's done a lot better. The machines are a lot smaller today. They're more compact. You can have more election districts. I know in the where I vote in Newfane at the town hall, there are, I think, I'm guessing here now, but at least 7 or 8 election districts in the one building. Prior to that, there was like 2, I think. You know? So.
That's great. That's great. I recently watched a news report that stated that people with disabilities are now getting out and voting. And I believe it was a national news report.
Really?
So
Well, that's a good
really
thing. That's a good thing.
encouraging to hear. I was like, that's awesome.
That's a very good thing. Because, you know, and I'm sure we're probably going to talk about this, but, you know, in last year's proposed state budget, right around this time of the year, the governor proposed some pretty severe hits to the developmentally disabled community.
Yes.
And, you know, we were able, with the help of some really great people in the legislature, Mickey Kearns being one, and also Assemblyman Harvey Wiesenberg from Long Island, fought very hard and very diligently to get that money put back in the state budget. So.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are worried about housing and budgets and stuff like that, but our system is kind of going to a more independent way of thinking about getting people to live more in the community.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Mike, I am totally in favor of that. And I'll tell you, I think where it starts, Mike, is right in the school system with the inclusion that they have in classrooms. You know, I was talking to a young teacher the other day, and she was telling me that she had a disabled student in her class. You know, she teaches, I think, the 3rd grade, and you know how, you know, the other kids just, you know, he's just one more kid in the class, you know, which is the way it should be.
Right.
You know, and the other kids, you know, treat him just as, you know, one of the classmates, and they actually help him out, you know, because obviously there's some challenges involved in it,
Right.
and they help him out, and he's just a regular member of the class, which is exactly the way it should. Now, you had kids thinking like that at that young age, you know, 2nd grade, 3rd grade.
Yes.
When they become adults, they become much more acceptable, and
Yes.
and I mean the non-disabled community
Yes.
becomes much more.
When they get that experience when they're younger, it follows them.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
And it grows and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
that's great.
Exactly.
In line with community representation for people with developmental disabilities. Now here's the tough one.
Okay.
We have this idea of the 2-rider rep bill for transportation, which basically
Yes.
means getting voting, 2 people with voting rights on the board of the NFTA,
Right.
Yes.
Right.
one with a disability and one without, so everybody's represented. What is your thought on that? Because I know
Okay.
you have a big part of that.
Right, I do. Now, let me just explain for the viewers, Mike, a little more detail on that.
Sure.
Okay. What Mike is referring to is legislation. When the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, that's our local transportation authority in Erie and Niagara County, was formed, I think it was an 11-member board of commissioners, still is 11 members, all of which are appointed by the governor and then approved by the New York State Senate. In the past several years, we have been able to change that governance structure. The members are still all appointed by the governor, but we have, excuse me, we have been able to add a non-voting member from the disabled community. We've added a non-voting member from the labor community, I believe. What Mike is talking about, what the advocates are seeking, is 2 additional commissioners that would be voting members of the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority Commission. Is that a good description of it, Mike? Yeah. I am in favor of that. I'm in favor of it. I think that what it would do, it would not only make their voice at the table. I mean, they do have a voice at the table now with the non-voting member, but it would give them, you know, not only a voice at the table, but a vote at the table, and that's very important. And I know that legislation has been introduced. Now, we should talk about the difficult side of this. Is, you know, it has to pass both the Senate and the Assembly, and then be signed into law by the governor.
Yep.
Governors, and I'm not speaking for this governor, but governors in the past have not been very accepting of legislation which they would term, I think, one of the vetoes, not on this legislation, but on another one, requiring that someone, I think, from the city of Buffalo be a member of the board. But the governors said that they didn't want every group, every geographic area would have to have a member on the board then, so they vetoed it. So I just to be very honest with you, Mike, I think it's going to be tough to get by the governor, but I'm very supportive of it.
Well, we thank you for that because I'm a member of Voice Buffalo. We've been working on that, and because we want to just see everybody represented and have a vote at the table. So that's very good.
I think it was a good first step, Mike and Gwen, to have that. With legislation that was sponsored by myself and Assemblyman Schimminger. I think it passed probably 2 years ago to have the non-voting member on.
Oh yes, that
the
was
non-voting
great.
member, yeah,
that was great. Very influential in helping us deal with the transportation.
Right, exactly.
And snafu there.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah.
Yes, she helped out a lot.
Right, right. So we took an important first step, but I think the time has come to take that second step.
Now, like, how can we help you in your office as a representative of the people from a self-advocacy point of view in helping the community? What do you see as our role? How can we be an aid to you?
Well, I think Mike and you and Gwen and the others, particularly from the Independent Living Center, do a great job of it. I mean, you invite me down to the Independent Living Center on a regular basis. You come by my office. You stop in Albany to see me. I mean, I think just being advocates is just what you are, and I know I get the letters, I get the emails, I get the phone calls, particularly from you, Mike. You don't have to ask that question. You know what to do.
I know. I bother you.
But no, you don't bother me, Mike. But I think it's establishing a relationship with the individual members. Clearly, members, there's a lot of things going on out there, but I think that Senator Grisanti in Erie County and Assemblyman Kearns in Erie County have been extremely supportive of your issues and advocate on your behalf.
I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the whole Justice Center thing that's come into play?
That's a very good question. I think we have to explain, Gwen, what the Justice Center thing is. The governor wants to basically close down some facilities, I think. Consolidate facilities, probably a better way to put it. When you talk about consolidate, some are going to close.
Yes.
Some are going to expand. And the governor, because of some abuses in the system, downstate, and in the Capital District, actually, the governor had a commission which came up with this idea to have more centrally located, what he calls justice centers, to provide care for people that are disabled. I think it's very difficult. And I have visited the Western New York DDSO on numerous occasions. I think they do an excellent job out there. I visited the DDSO up in Ogdensburg with one of my colleagues. We held a hearing up there on it, and Ogdensburg is an extremely remote area in the North Country. The problem with something like that, and even at West Seneca, is when you take the Justice Center, the Consolidated Service Center, how do you get individuals who need those services there, particularly if you're cutting paratransit? And again, in Western New York it's challenging. In some areas in New York State, like up in the North Country, it's nearly impossible. So the governor has backed off on this consolidation and closing I think in Binghamton and I think in Ogdensburg. It was a little disappointing he didn't mention West Seneca in there. I was myself and again my colleagues from Western New York on the Senate side. I'm talking about Senator Grisanti, Senator Gallivan, Senator Ransenhofer, and myself sent the governor an immediate letter and said, basically, hey, what about us? You announced that Binghamton wasn't going to close, Ogdensburg wasn't going to close. I think there was a third one in the Finger Lakes region he said was not going to close, but he didn't mention West Seneca. So, I think we're consolidated enough when it comes to the services to the development of the disabled. West Seneca is, many of the buildings there are vacant now because, they've really, really changed the mission there.
Yes.
For the better.
I used to live there, so I know.
Well, actually, technically, it is closed, and what they want to do now is get the idea of people being in group homes, give them the option of moving more out in the community, which theoretically should save money. So I think a lot of people criticize the governor for some of his decisions and the state and federal government. But I think this provides a tremendous opportunity for growth as far as our society accepting and knowing people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a long time coming.
Mm-hmm. I do too, but I think when you provide those day-to-day services, though, Mike, I think you have to have facilities like West Seneca, particularly the adolescent psychiatric unit that's there.
Well, I think we really need to take a look at how we deliver services and work with all groups, parents, people that receive services, community groups, our representatives, and really hash out the best way to do this.
Well, I think that's what he tried to do with, as Gwen pointed out, with the Justice Center.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we have the Olmstead decision from the United States Supreme Court.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we integrated that into the New York State, again, legislation that I sponsored a few years ago now. But but it was a good bill.
Yeah. So I think that I think we're making a lot of strides in our area.
I think we are.
Yeah,
I think we are.
I think that's,
when you look
very
at,
good.
I sometimes meet with colleagues from other states, and when it comes to the developmentally disabled and disabled community, I think in New York, look, there's always room for improvement. We're not far from perfect, but I think we do a pretty good job here.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left.
Right.
We want you to say some things that you want the public to know. I know you have your own show on here and everything like that, but what would you want the public to know about yourself or what you do or anything?
Well, I just, first of all, I want to stress that I appreciate very much the invitation to be here today. Mike, I'm out there meeting with the public all the time. I'll tell you, the people can find me on Facebook, on internet. That's the way to contact me today. I never thought it would be. When I first started out, it was letters and phone calls, but today it's almost all electronic. And I encourage people to reach out, to give me their opinion on things. We're going through, I think, some very difficult times in upstate New York.
Yes.
We have the focus of the governor. We're talking about doing things, with this Riverbend project, which is an energy research and development project. I'm very into the energy and related fields there. I chair the Senate Energy Committee. We have a hydro plant here, the largest hydroelectric plant in the northeastern United States of America, right here at Niagara Falls.
Nice.
And that's what I'm looking to do, Mike, is get more involved in some energy issues and get people involved in it.
Okay, well, we're basically out of time.
We are, okay.
But we would like
Thanks,
to
Gwen.
thank you again
Mike,
for
thank you.
coming.
Thank
Not
you
a
for coming.
problem.
And we'd like to thank everybody here, the viewers, for joining us. And please
Yes.
join us again on Self-Advocacy in Action.
This is Eric Bazant speaking for Self-Advocacy in Action, a Santa's Western production. The Self-Advocacy in Action production crew is looking for